Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back in another video. And as the title suggests, tonight I hope to talk about focusing on goals and aims, objectives, and things like that. As I often say, apologies if I repeat ideas, because I know I'm a bit guilty of repeating ideas quite a lot, as I say. But focus apparently could stand for an acronym. Some people say, which is focus on one course until you're successful in that course, and then move on to another. Basically, I suppose. But yeah, a lot of time I like to think of lots of different ideas and things like that, and try and take on too much, as I put it. So it's a bit difficult to sort of focus. But I suppose that's what they say: if you focus on one thing until you're successful in that area, then move on to another. So it's like with momentum, that probably is less overwhelming. And one of the reasons why I do things in list form, or think of things in list form, or think of lists, is because it helps me to narrow things down, if you like, or to break things down, basically, so that it's more manageable, sizable, and things like that. Anywho, so there are 5 causes which I hope to work on and dedicate my life to, if you like. And as I said on the Facebook version of this, I think the beauty is that it's like 5 fingers on one hand. I was going to say on a thumb then, but on one hand, including your thumb as a subsection of a finger, if you like. But yeah, so it fits onto one hand, so it's like an ability to focus on one or two things rather than on many. But in this case, like there's 5 causes. I suppose I could add having fun and probably another cause, and a nefarious cause that I probably won't mention here. But if I had the ability, but yeah. If God gave me the choice, but anyway, I'm going to move on. But yeah, so it's basically to whatever benefits Italian football, whatever benefits Celtic, FC, whatever benefits libertarianism, liberty, freedom, and that kind of thing, human rights and whatnot, whatever benefits former colonies, and finally whatever benefits like tackling poverty, suffering, sadness, and all that kind of alleviating those sorts of things, and instead making people happier, spreading all the positive things instead of negatives, like as much as possible anyway. So yeah, so helping to tackle those sorts of problems and make things more positive. So like, yeah, make people happier, spread joy, and be kind to all possible living things, or be kind to all living things as much as possible, and that kind of thing. So those are the 5 sort of causes, quote unquote, as I call them, which I dream to focus on. And yeah, if I could, if whatever amount, even if I made, say, well, even if I raised or made somehow fundraised for whatever billions and billions of pounds, I would only take what I need to live on, and the rest I would donate to these 5 causes equally. So 20% each to each of these 5 causes, if I could. When it comes to Italian football, I would love to encourage as much investment into Italian football as I often talk about. So they would have as much money, funds, and resources, or whatever you want to call it, as possible. Money, resources, funds, and that sort of thing, investment and whatnot. So they would be able to reinvest that into buying better players, bringing in the best possible players to Serie A, for instance, investing in youth infrastructure and things like that, whatever will benefit football clubs, as I often talk about, like managers, coaches, and that sort of thing. And going on alliteration, possibly all possible Italian teams, especially Serie A teams, which is obviously a top flight of Italian football. I would love to have, I was going to say unlimited funds then, I don't know about that, but maybe. But I would love to have as much investment as possible, as I say, but I would love for companies places, and entire nations with the same initial or same letters to invest in them. For instance, Fiorentina to gain investment from finance companies, Fortune 500 companies, possibly, mainly companies maybe, or places that begin with F, like France, to invest in Fiorentina, for instance, and improve relations between Italy and France further through that, for instance, and things like that, possibly. But for Italian teams, as I say, I would welcome as much investment and sponsorship as possible from all possible sort of sources. Maybe Italian fans themselves could donate to the local clubs. Businesses in Italy could donate to local clubs and things like that. So that, including to buy better players, but also to invest in the academies, which would benefit the national team as well. Italian politicians and councillors and people like that could invest in the Italian FA, and they could also work together. So yeah, councillors from, say, Florence could invest in Fiorentina, and from Milan could invest in either AC or Inter Milan, depending on which part of Milan they're from, and where AC is more popular, they can invest in that area, and where Inter is more popular, the council in that area could invest in Inter, for instance, as well as local politicians, I say. But yeah, maybe Italians themselves, and they could like set up academies in their name, perhaps, or things like that. So if they had enough money, or some people who don't have quite enough money could donate a little bit of money between them. But if there's millions, so if there's 1 million people who donated £10 each or €10 each or whatever, then that would add up so that they could invest in it, in buying better players or academies or things like that over time. Although nowadays 10 million is not that much in football in terms of buying players, but in terms of buying academies, setting up places where it's probably even a better idea for the long term, because you could train a lot of players for that money. But nowadays some footballers go for like hundreds of millions now. As I heard recently, Lionel Messi might be going to Saudi Arabia for 320 million a year or something ridiculous like that. And yeah, I'd love for Italian teams to be able to fundraise for that, although it is a ridiculous amount of money. But I'd say that's one of my guilty pleasures. But I'll, maybe on alliterations or just generally investors to invest, as I say, even fans to donate and things like that. And famous fans could perhaps have their own academies in their name, and former and current players like Roberto Baggio, obviously he's a former player, Pirlo, and players like that could have their own training academies and even be involved in coaching players to learn and then pass on their skills and knowledge. And even overseas players who play or have played in the past in Italy, such as Ronaldinho, even Zidane and all that, those sorts of players from AC Milan and Juventus respectively, Kaká for AC Milan as well, could work on their own coaching and set up their own academies. And when it comes to Celtic, I would love for as many people to invest in them as possible, although I know that's, for the league they're in, it would be quite amazing for them to do so. But I think that I did realise that if an Italian team, for instance, had companies, places and nations with the same initial investing in them, or the same acronyms or whatever, then it would, then Celtic, even though it's one team, would if they had all the investors, would have just as much money, I suppose, which would be quite strange, I suppose, even by my standards. But yeah, like going back to Italian football, like Udinese could be invested in by U.A.E, for instance, U.A.E for Udinese, obviously they both start with U, or United, even United States, or even United Kingdom maybe, or countries with United in their name perhaps could invest because they start with U. But yeah, so I think that'd be quite interesting. I often think of like imaginations, where I think of different hypothetical imaginations or hypotheses, how you pronounce it. But yeah, with Celtic, I was thinking like also fans. I think Michael Owen is a Celtic fan, if I'm not mistaken, and Wayne Rooney, and a few other footballers, and if I can remember his name, Conor, that's it, Conor McGregor, UFC fighter, and people like that, even some other UFC fighters and wrestlers, maybe they could donate to, or even celebrity fans of Celtic, generally famous fans of Celtic, could donate to like their own academies, so they could build their own academies. And I think even Jennifer Love Hewitt, I think her name is, obviously who was married to Kurt Cobain or not, maybe even she could, who's a Celtic fan apparently, could have her own academy that she creates. So it could be the Jennifer Love Hewitt Celtic Academy, or the Michael Owen Celtic Academy, Wayne Rooney Celtic Academy, Conor McGregor Celtic Academy, and things like that. I think that'd be quite interesting. But yeah, so to have their own academies, and even if they donated to or had shares in the club, or invest, or even donated to the club, or invested in it or sponsored it or whatever they could do to financially help the club to buy even better players, but also to develop young players, which is most important for me when it comes to Italian football, because I support the national team in Italy, or as I don't really support Scotland. I only support Celtic in Scotland. Although I do have a soft spot for Hibs because they have an Irish connection and they're sort of linked to Celtic, and Ross County because one of my mates is a Ross County fan. But yeah, mainly I just support Celtic in Scotland. But with Italy, I support all their teams. But yeah, famous Italian fans could also do the same for Italy, of course, perhaps, hopefully. So I hope they'll raise as much money as possible. Libertarianism, I hope to raise for that as well. And if I could, I would dedicate 20% or a fifth, of course, of all my attention, time, money, effort, energy, resources, whatever I have and can donate to or dedicate to all those 5 things equally as possible. But I'm not that organised, so I suppose I would have to be very structured. But if I could get like a notebook with that, like dividers, I would have them equally divided between those 5 things, with ideas for all 5 of those things. But yeah, maybe if I was more organised, as I say, I would split my time equally between all 5 of those things. And also, I'd love to leave a fifth of all my money and possessions in my will to those things as well as part of my legacy. But anyway, I think I've waffled enough. And as ever, I'd love to read your comments. I know I talked about focus, and I probably didn't focus quite as well as I like, but I think I did, by my standards, I did probably quite a good job. But again, I'd love to read your suggestions, comments, or how you think I did, basically, or if you want to make a reaction video or anything like that, yeah, whatever. Please post in the links in the comments. Sorry, and I am out. Peace and love.